Hello and welcome to another of my political ideas videos, and today we are going to look at socialism and all its different types. Now, for a group of people who believe in collectivism and everybody working together, they really are a rather divided lot. So within socialism we have lots and lots of different types and lots of different subgroups. The two fundamental types are fundamentalist socialism, which is the more extreme version, and then revisionist socialism, which is the more moderate version. So within fundamentalist socialism, we're going to look at Marxism, Marxist-Leninism, democratic socialism, and Neo-Marxism. In revisionist socialism, I'm going to look at classical revisionism, social democracy, and the third way. And we are going to go really through the extremes here. We are going to cover essentially the entirety of the left-hand side of the political spectrum, going all the way through from oppressive communist regimes through to the third way, which you can question whether it's socialism or not. Right. So fundamentalist socialism, as I said, this is the more extreme version. Essentially what it says is that capitalism must be abolished. Fundamentalist socialists disagree on the speed this should be done and whether there's a revolution needed or not to do it, but they agree on the fact that capitalism must go. It's based on the original writings of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, but it has split into various subgroups, and I'm going to go through some of those subgroups in a minute. As I've said, some of the bits are revolutionary, some of the bits are not, but this is radical socialism, far left of the political spectrum. Right, so the first type of fundamental socialism is Marxism. Now, this is the original, the origin of it all, and it's based on the key thinkers Marx and Engels. And the basis of their ideology is on fraternity, solidarity, and equality. And they say none of this is compatible with capitalism. So capitalism must go. They argue that capitalism causes oppression and exploitation and alienation between the workers and the capitalists. Oh, they are imposed on the workers by the capitalists, leading essentially to class war. So the workers will rise up once they gain class consciousness, and they will overthrow the capitalist class. And this would lead to the removal of capitalism and the move to socialism. Socialism would then wither away, the state would wither away, and you reach communism and then on to the end of history. Now, Marx describes how society would move through a variety of stages. There are 10 in all, going all the way through from basic kind of primitive society, through society with slavery, through feudalism, and all the way through getting up to ultimately the end of history at the end, having gone through communism, and before that socialism, and before that capitalism. Now, this is referred to as historical materialism. And Marx argues that it is inevitable. This isn't just him. He says it's not just a theory. This is how history works. And so we're going to see later on a difficulty for socialists when it comes to the works of Marx, because they're going to need to explain away why it hasn't happened. Marx believed these would happen in the most advanced capitalist countries first, and was why he based himself and focused a lot of his work on England, where the Industrial Revolution had taken place, and therefore it was furthest along the line in terms of capitalism, making a socialist revolution most likely. Right. Now, this is the bad boy of socialism. This is the branch of socialism that gives all the rest of them a bad name. And again, there is a real argument, I think, about whether this really is socialism ultimately, because the idea of the workers being helped and collective and everything working for everybody seems to come a bit to pieces in some very, very oppressive regimes. So Marxist-Leninism is Lenin's take on Marxist theory. Lenin was a man in a hurry. So Marx said essentially you have to wait to go through all the stages before you can get to socialism. Lenin is in Russia, and he goes, well, we can't wait another 100 years for Russia to go through that. We want revolution now. and so that's its origin place. Then we, as I said, it's given socialism a bad name because we have the likes of Lenin and Stalin and Mao and others. So really terrible regimes which have this kind of banner of socialism on them, and the form that they're using is Marxist Leninism. So Lenin says, right, let's forget historical materialism. Marx is right about most things, but he isn't right about that. Actually, we can fulfill the jump to socialism before the capitalism phase has gone through properly. He says, actually, this is advantageous because in the capitalist stage, you get this false consciousness where the workers are essentially brainwashed into thinking capitalism is a good idea. Because of opportunity, and they could all become fabulously wealthy, which they won't. And so what Lenin says is actually doing it my way is better than Marx's way because the workers will accept socialism more easily. Now, this is the bit where we get to these oppressive regimes, because he then says, well, how's it going to happen? Well, there's going to be this revolutionary elite, this vanguard, and they're going to bring about change. They're going to overthrow the old regime. They're going to educate the masses about socialism, propaganda. They're going to rule through this single communist party, and they're going to put everything in place, and everything's going to be fine. It's referred to as democratic centralism. Essentially, it is a one-party state. Discussion only takes place within that one party. Once that party has made decisions, there will be no dissent. There will be no opposition. It will not be tolerated. It will be considered counter-revolutionary, and very, very bad things will happen to people. Most notable of this you can see with Stalin, with his purges. It has led to very, very oppressive regimes, and that would seem to give up on some of those key principles which Marxism is based on. There's been various additions to it as we've gone through. Stalin added socialism in one country because he didn't like Trotsky's idea of a permanent revolution of all countries all going around the world, because Trotsky says that one socialist nation can't survive by itself. Stalin said, yes, we can. And the basis we're going to do that on is a form of socialist nationalism. And so he kind of wrapped socialism and nationalism together and created this thing which was a fundamental bit of propaganda and could hold everything together in this national pride. Mao added the idea of a cultural revolution, which rather than the revolution being permanent, as in lots of countries, that you constantly update the culture of the country and remove all cultural traces from what's gone before. And again, this had some really horrendous consequences in China. So again, this is the bad boy of socialism. This is the one that gives all the rest of it a bad name. Right, this is in the form of fundamentalist socialism that doesn't involve a revolution. So this is a milder form in terms of how to get there, but not necessarily completely milder in terms of some of the ideas in terms of the socialist ideals. So it's an idea that has actually regained some traction. It was one of the bits of socialism that was seen to be dying out, really. But in recent years, with the likes of Jeremy Corbyn in the UK and parties in Greece, we have seen the democratic socialists kind of regain some ground. In the early days of the Labour Party, it's really important. The original Clause 4 that called for people to gain the controls of the means of production, i.e. nationalisation, and about redistribution of wealth. Fundamental socialist principles which were ingrained in the Labour Party were tweaked later on by Blair, and we'll have a look at his ideology later on. We got key thinkers like Beatrice Webb, key organisations like the Fabian Society, who imbued this and embedded this in the Labour Party. And then we've got figures in the Labour Party like Tony Benn, who have continued to promote these ideas through the years. In terms of inaction, then we enact Lee's government from 45. We see it enacted. We see the NHS being born. We see nationalisation of a wide range of industries. We see huge growth in the welfare state, progressive tax systems. So we have seen this in the UK. And communist parties across Western Europe have also followed these ideas through the years. So it is a radical form of socialism, and essentially still doesn't believe that capitalism is a good idea. And it has been enacted to some degree in a number of countries, including to a moderate degree in the UK post 45. This group are going to be very excited, hence the picture above me. These are another fundamentalist socialist group called Neo-Marxists. And then in Neo-Marxism, they try and explain away the fact that Marx seems to have been wrong about the development of history because capitalism hasn't gone away. And essentially what they say is that there is cultural hegemony with capitalism. And essentially what this means is capitalist ideas are perpetrated through the art, through media, through education. And that means gradual change is impossible because everybody's been indoctrinated in it. Think about Hollywood films and about the promotion of the individual rising from nothing to great kind of fame and glory. And we see a lot of this in Western art and media and film and news and everything else. And so what the neo-Marxists say is, well, so essentially gradualism is not going to work. So what they're going to do, and the reason why I've got the icon above and why they're getting excited, is they're going to wait for an economic slump. We're just going to have one. And so they might get very excited and go, this is the time for the revolution, and we will go and overthrow it. One of the key neo-Marxist writers is a guy called Ralph Miliband. You might know his surname because he is the father of Ed and David, the right and the wrong Miliband, who you may have seen in the Labour Party in more recent years. Ed Miliband just returned to the shadow cabinet, former leader of the Labour Party, struggled eating bacon sandwiches. So again, it's an idea, it's been around, but how strong an influence that has in kind of real world politics is debated. Right. So we've done with the more extreme version, the fundamentalist socialists, and now we're going to move on to the revisionist socialism. Now, this is a type of socialism that goes again into a variety of subgroups, and essentially what they don't accept is Marx's basic principle that capitalism must be destroyed. They accept capitalism will continue to exist in some form. They also completely reject the idea of revolution. So we've gone beyond our revolutionaries now. And they are the kind of the more moderate left wing. They are the centre left of the political spectrum. And this is the form of socialism that we see in most Western democracies and in modern day UK. Right. So first form of revisionist socialism, classical revisionism, was based on the writing of Bernstein at the turn of the 19th into the 20th century. And what he pointed out is that, look, workers' conditions are getting better, and they could get even better still, because if you get a socialist government, they'll continue to improve the lot of the workers. And actually, socialist governments turning up is becoming increasingly likely, because he's writing at a stage where the franchise is growing and this idea or pressure for a universal franchise is growing. And he goes, well, actually, it's okay. Capitalism and socialism can coexist. Everything's going to be fine. So that's why I've got the nice smiley happy icon with a thumbs up above me, because he's going, right, actually, we can all coexist. We don't have to destroy capitalism. Right, the main form of revisionist socialism is what's known as social democracy. And this is, again, it's a moderate form of socialism that accepts the continuation of capitalism. It's developed under thinkers like Anthony Crosland. It focuses on Keynesian economics, which is mainly about the management of the economy to prevent the boom and bust cycle. And the government will pump lots of money into public services to maintain levels of employment, to maintain basic standards of living. And with that, then the economy will continue to grow, capitalism will still exist, there will still be private business, private industry, and all the rest of it, and the government just kind of guiding the economy here and there to make sure it's for the greater good. Crosland and others pointed to the need for kind of national, not European-wide control, which is why when we've had the Brexit debate, you get a lot of people on the left who were against staying in the EU. But one of the things that's different to democratic socialism, they said, well, actually, nationalisation's gone far enough. Whilst in the Labour Party, you have a democratic socialist going, we need more nationalisation, nationalise this, nationalise that. A social democrat will go, no, we've had enough nationalisation. A mixed economy is fine as long as there is a little bit of state control. That is all we need. One of the questions I would pose to you at this point is, well, how close is this? Is this to John Rawls' version of modern liberalism that we looked at? And here, the ideas of some forms of modern liberalism and moderate forms of social democracy can look really interchangeable. Now, the most moderate form of revisionist socialism is the third way, and here, really, we do get into the question of, is this socialism, or is this modern liberalism in some form? And it doesn't look enormously different. It is the ideology used under New Labour by Blair. The key thinker is a guy called Anthony Giddens. And it not only accepts capitalism, it accepts essentially free market neoliberal economics. It believes in greater equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. And it's kind of the first form of socialism really embraced the idea that people can be wealthy. And they're completely removing this idea of conflict and this idea of they've got, we should take it off them. And on the idea that by allowing people to be really wealthy, then actually what you do is you promote lots of economic growth, and then you take taxes off them and you use that to help other people. And that's what they did. They took tax revenue, they spent it on public services, and they promoted equality of opportunity. So things like EMA, which was a sum of money paid each week to disadvantaged students for attending post-16 education. So you just go to sixth form, and depending if you met the criteria, you'd pick up 35 quid a week for doing so. They really pushed growth of university numbers, which is one of the reasons why we've got university intake as high as it is, was a real push for that under Blair's government. And then they focused more on removing inequality based on things like gender or race or sexuality. So, for example, the advent of civil partnerships, rather than focusing, as socialists had traditionally always done, on economic inequality, which again leads me to pose the question, is this socialism? And if you go back to the stuff that we've done on modern liberalism, it doesn't look enormously different. So we've gone through essentially the entirety of the left-hand side of the political spectrum, because we've ended up here pretty much in the middle. So we're about as little to the left as you can go and still be to the left. So I hope you've enjoyed that kind of whistle-stop tour of the different types of socialism, going all the way from fundamentalist socialism with Marxism and Leninist-Marxism and social democratic socialism, to the revisionist views with social democracy and the third way. As I've said, socialism is one of these bits where there are hundreds and hundreds of little subgroups. I've tried to cover the main ones. And this is one of the challenging things in studying socialism, is kind of when you're making the judgments about it in terms of looking at the key ideas, is they don't agree. They really don't agree. And we've seen that in particular with the economic side, with the either fundamentalists who completely reject capitalism, to the revisionists who accept it, to the third way, which is part of the revisionist view that completely embraces it. Right, please like, comment, subscribe, and there's some quizzes and stuff in there as you go through. So click on that I button and I'll take you through to some of those. Right, thank you for watching. I will catch you all again soon. Next video I'm going to do on socialism will be on the key thinkers. So that's going to be another big one, a really chunky one, but another one that's really important for the exam. Thank you for watching.